Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in, and a big thanks to Matthias and everybody on the Maxon team for having me on today. For those of you who don't know, my name is Travis Ragsdale. I'm a 3D artist and motion designer based in Dallas, Texas. I've worked on projects for companies like Callaway, Spotify, Pabst Blue Ribbon, Jägermeister, Hot Wheels, and some others. I also do a lot of fun looping animations and personal work, which I've been posting on Instagram for about 3 or 4 years now. Before we dive in, here's a look at my 2020 show reel, which has some of my favorite work from last year. Today we're going to be taking a look at a couple techniques that I developed while working on some commercial projects in the past. First, I'm going to show you how I created this procedural object slicing effect using the Voronoi Fracture Object and a couple of effectors. Next, I'll cover how I created this miniature construction time-lapse effect based on the amazing titles from the show Silicon Valley. This effect is fully procedural and uses the MoGraph tools inside of Cinema 4D. All right, without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is for this example, I'm just going to use a cube, but you could use any object that just consists of a single mesh. So you could use like a lot of these primitives, or you could use your own model or something from the content browser, just as long as it's a singular mesh. We're going to take this and we're going to put it inside of a null object by holding Alt with the cube selected. And we're going to call this base object. So this is going to be the base object that we're going to be slicing. Next, we're going to create an instance of this null, and we can just hide the original. And then we're going to put the instance into a Voronoi fracture. So with that selected, you'll hold Alt and throw it into a Voronoi fracture. And then after that, you're going to create a matrix object. And let's just put this down to 1. So it's a singular matrix. If we hide that, you can just see singular matrix. We're going to duplicate this, make a copy, and then we'll rename the first one 1_A, matrix 1_A, and then the second one, matrix 1_B. So with this technique, staying organized is going to be super important. So this naming convention is basically 1 meaning the first slice, and A meaning side A of that slice. Okay, so next we're going to actually use these matrix objects to create the slice in this cube, because right now we've just got a random distribution. So I'm going to delete, in the Voronoi fracture, delete the default distribution source, and I'm just going to drag both A and B into that source. Nothing's happened because they're both at just 0. So let's go ahead and grab the position of matrix 1A and put it at positive 0.001. So just barely offset it in the positive direction. And then we'll do the same thing with matrix B, just so that it's even and the cut is directly in the center. And we'll do negative 0.001. Okay, so now we're going to use this same naming convention, but we're going to do it for a couple of selection tags. So I'm going to go to the MoGraph selection tool. We'll just go to our front view, make a selection by hovering over that little dot. Click away from the selection tag so that it's not selected, so that you don't override it. And then we will make another selection. So that is going to be our selection on the right side, and that would be our selection on the left side. So it basically just selects this side, and then we can control that individually. All right, so we want to use the same naming convention here. So if you look at A is in the positive X and B is in the negative X direction. So we're going to just rename these selection tags 1A and 1B corresponding to which side they're on. So this is on the negative X, this tag. So we'll do 1_B, and the other one's obviously 1_A. And it's going to make a lot more sense why you have to stay so organized here in just a little bit. All right. Okay, so next we're going to create, with the Voronoi fracture selected, we're going to create an inheritance effector. All right, and we're going to duplicate this because we're going to have 1A and 1B just like we did before. So let's call this 1_A and 1_B. Make sure we've got both of those in there. Drag them in order just to be organized. All right. So now I'm going to just turn off the scale parameter, and then that's for both of them. Make sure we've got both selected. And then I'm going to drag in the effector tab. I'm going to drag the corresponding selection tag. So that's 1B. Let's do 1A. And then the object that I want to use to control this side is going to be 1A as well. It's the matrix. And we'll do the same thing for 1B. So that's 1B. Put that into the selection. The object would be matrix 1B. So now nothing's changed, but if you notice, now we can use these matrix objects to drive the position and rotation of this slice. So if you grab the rotation tool and rotate the matrix, you'll see that we can rotate the slices individually and it doesn't affect their position. So that's great. We're going to do this a few more times and then it will basically start to look like what you're expecting. I'm going to zero back out these rotations. And I'm just going to grab all of these, the effectors and the matrix objects, and group them and call this null slice 1. All right, so I'm going to create our second slice now. So let's go ahead and copy, paste. Okay, and we want to rename all of this. I'm actually going to use the naming tool, which is a great helpful tool for renaming things quickly. So I'm going to change all of these. Oops, got my naming tool. Replace 1 with 2. There we go. Okay, so we're going to do the same process again here, just creating another Voronoi fracture, putting that one inside of it. Delete out our distribution source. Zero out these expositions of the matrices, and then drag in our second set of matrices. And then we're going to offset each of them positive and negative 0.001 on the y-axis this time, so that we slice across the middle. So on A, I'm going to do 0.001, and then B, negative 0.001. All right, and then let's go into the, looks like, front view, and we're going to create a couple of selection tags. So for this slice, we don't want to select, we don't want to do 4 selection tags, even though there are 4 pieces. We want to treat the top 2 and the bottom 2 as if they are one piece, or if they're each one piece. So from our front view, I'm going to grab the MoGraph selection. We'll change this to a rectangle. I will grab the top, click away, grab the bottom ones, and we're good. Now let's rename this. Want 2 underscore A and 2 underscore B. All right. Now we're gonna drag in our effectors into here, and let's make sure. Okay, so we have the right object in there, but we need to drag the proper selection tag into there. So just drag that new selection tag, and that should be good. Yep, see, it's rotating as one piece. It's not trying to rotate this piece and this piece individual of one another on their own axis. It's trying to rotate them together as one piece, which is what we want. Because typically, if we were just to use a effector, a MoGraph effector, and change the rotation on the y-axis, it would rotate each of these pieces individual from one another along that axis. So that's why I use this setup. All right, we're going to do this one more time on the z-axis, and then we can get into animating it and texturing. Just do the same thing, should be even quicker this time. Copy paste. I will change this to 3, Shift C, get our naming tool, select all of these, replace 2 with 3, replace, done. Create one more Voronoi fracture, delete our distribution source, zero out our position of our matrices, 0.001 on the matrix 3A, negative 0.001 on matrix 3B, and that's in the z-axis. go to our Voronoi fracture. We're going to drag in our matrix objects, and now you can see we have another cut. This time we're just going to go to the top, the right view. We're going to do a new MoGraph selection. We'll drag this side, and we'll drag this side. Okay. And in our matrix 3A, or in our inheritance 3A, rather, oh, we need to rename these. So this would be 3_B. This one is 3_A. In our inheritance effector, let's drag in the corresponding tags. So we forgot to drag the inheritance into the effectors list. Okay, and so now we should just be able to rotate those pieces individually. So yeah, this is looking good. We can keyframe now. So let's do a few keyframes for those matrix objects just to get something animated that we can kind of look at. So this first slice is going to be on the p-axis, the pitch. So we're going to keyframe, move forward about 15 frames, rotate this about 30, just whatever you think looks best, -30, so you're going in opposite directions. Keyframe, go up to slice 2. These are going to be rotated on the h-axis, so let's set a keyframe at 15 for 0. Go forward about 15 frames, rotate the top, maybe that much, and the bottom, maybe that much. Okay, set another keyframe for both, and we'll do the same thing one more time. Set a keyframe, value of 0, go forward about 15 frames, and rotate each side however you want. Okay. Oh, that was in the wrong axis. So let's set a keyframe in the banking at 45, go back to 30, set them both to 0. Okay. And if we go into the F curve in the timeline, we can just grab all of these keyframes, just grab a big selection around all of them, and just drag these handles out. And what this is going to do is basically ease in and out the rotation of each slice. All right. So we can turn off the colorization now so that we can maybe see this a little better. So one thing to note about this technique is that it's calculating 3 different Voronoi fractures and like 6 different inheritance effectors and a bunch of matrix objects, and you know, it's not slow by any means, but sometimes when you play through it and then you go back to the beginning, it gets stuck in the viewport. So usually you just have to move around or just hit the A key while hovering over the viewport, and it will force a recalculation. Not a huge deal, but just something to kind of keep in mind, because you know, it's a little frustrating if you go back to the beginning and it's stuck. Just hit A and it goes back, recalculates everything at frame 0. Okay, so before we get into a quick texture of this animation, I wanted to show how cool the setup we have is. Basically, this base object, we could put whatever we wanted into this and it would just auto update. So one thing I could do is, let's see, create another single mesh object. So if I've got this cylinder, right, let's just drag that into our base object, and now hide the original cylinder, and maybe give this some more segments, and you'll see it just works exactly the same. We could even drag it in while it's cut, and it still updates because it's using this instance. Another thing is actually really cool. So in this null, since this instance is referencing the null, we can actually rotate. So if we look at the wireframe, we can actually rotate the cube, and the cuts remain the same straight on each axis. But from this angle, obviously, it looks a lot more random if you just kind of look at those cuts. You know, it doesn't look as uniform and perfectly even as it did when we had just no rotation. So that's just an easy thing you can do, and then the cuts will work just fine. Pretty cool. And like I said, you could bring in any object, for example, like this dice in the Maxon inside this cube. This dice from the content browser, you know, we could just drag this into this base, and then let's see here. Oh, we gotta put it in the null so we can hide it. And then we've got nice slicing dice. Yeah, we could also rotate this, just give it a little more randomness, whatever. I think it looks really cool. All right. So we're going to go back to just a regular cube for the sake of this next part. Make sure we've got that dragged in there. Okay. And I will probably just give this a little bit of a round edge there. So that looks nice. Okay, so real quick, I'm going to jump and open Octane, and we'll do just a super basic, simple texturing and lighting of this, and then we can close up. Okay, so here we are in my Octane layout. What we're going to do is let's make the aspect ratio just a square, so 1280 by 1280. Create a camera. Go into that camera, and then let's play through here, find a good angle just to look at. There we go. Okay, and then I'm going to zoom in this camera, get a nice zoomed lens. All right, something like that looks good. And then we're going to turn on the live viewer. Okay, and because it's calculating constantly, we're going to just turn off check geometry while we texture and light this. So first I'm just going to create a back plane to be our wall, move it back and scale it up. Okay, and now we can turn off check geometry so that we don't have to refresh every time that the Voronoi fracture calculates. Okay. And then something I like to do while I'm lighting is just jump out into the second view and change it to perspective so that we can move around and the camera is still. Okay, so I'm going to create a targeted area light, bring it over here. Already that's looking pretty cool. We drag it away, something like that. I think I want a nice harsh shadow like that, and then and then let's just kind of bring up the brightness, turn down the intensity a little bit, and then let's copy this light and kind of move it down below to just give a little rim light on the side there. Cool. Don't need these. I'm going to create a glossy material, and I'm going to drag that onto our Voronoi fracture. And then in the color, let's give this a nice, what do we want to do? Maybe a pink, So update that, give it some roughness, and then maybe we give it a little more metallic-y kind of look. I'm going to make an HDRI environment and just select one of these. This is fine. Just give it some reflection there. Maybe I'll turn down the roughness just a little bit, something like that. And then now maybe I'll adjust this light a little bit over like that. Okay. And then we can create a new material for the background. Let's do like a pattern or something. So I'll create a noise, throw it into the diffuse, and I'm going to just pump up the contrast a ton, bring down the octaves, and then I'll scale this down, so something like that. And then we'll do the gamma so that we got a nice pattern. And then maybe let's do like chips, do like a terracotta type pattern or something. Okay. And then we'll just put an Octane gradient on that. And for the black value, let's do like a light pink, super light like that, and maybe even lighter. And then we'll do like a sort of sample it from over here. Like, yeah, something like that. All right, that looks pretty good. And then we could turn up the roughness on this, and maybe just use that same noise in the bump right there, just to give it a little bit of bump. Okay, and then now I'm looking, I might want to do a little more saturation on this. That looks pretty good. Now we can go into the Octane camera. We could add like a LUT. I've got some in here like that. Maybe bring down the highlights and maybe add a little bit of glow like that. We can adjust these colors. This is really up to you, whatever you want to do. I just kind of like going with this color scheme here, so that's what I'm going with. All right, and now that is our scene. So you can play through it, slices, and you could obviously you could loop this by just taking these keyframes. If we double the timeline here to 100 and drag this one over, drag these here, drag this one over. So I'm basically just doing the reverse of what we have at the beginning. That one there, and then finally that one. And it looks like 81 is our timeline. So now we've got a nice looping animation of our cube slicing. Okay, so here we are. First thing we're going to do is create a text spline. And so this is going to be the base shape that we use for the whole effect. So you could just type whatever. I'll type ABC. You can change the font. Maybe I'll pick something, let's see, like this one is good. Yeah, nice thick font. Maybe, yeah, let's do this one. And I'm just going to work with one letter for now. We can set this to middle and we'll rotate it 90 degrees. Okay. Now, next we're going to use this spline. We're going to create an instance. So with the spline selected, we'll have an instance of that. We could call this base text And then that's our instance. Let's create an extrude, and we're going to change this to Y, Z, and we'll just clone it, or extrude it maybe -10. Negative. Just a little bit, like -2. That's our floor. Let's call this floor. And then we're just going to put this into a cloner, and we'll make it a linear cloner. It's going to go up in the z-axis, so maybe 20, -20. Okay, something like that. Now that I'm looking, maybe we don't want the italic here, so I'm just going to go with regular, just for so it doesn't look slanted. Okay, so this is our floors, and let's do 6 stories. Okay, and maybe we'll only go like 15. Yeah, that looks better. All right. So next we're going to create the beams that sort of hold this up. So we'll create a cube. We know it needs to be 15 tall because that's how far apart our clones are. And then, you know, just a thin beam, maybe something like that. Okay. And then we're going to grab, throw this into a cloner as well and set this to linear. We're going to do the same thing, and we're going to offset it 15 centimeters up. Okay, and I'm going to move this up 7.5 so that it's just even with the floor. Okay, and we should have the same number of clones here, so 6. All right, these will be our beams, and then what we're going to do is clone this cloner. So put it in another cloner, and we're going to make it an object. We'll call this beams main, and the object will just be this text. Okay, so obviously it's a little uneven. We're going to change the distribution to step, and we want to create, you know, as many as it needs to look good. I think that's about right. In order to fix these ones that are sticking out from the bottom, that's happening because the spline points are pointed down the vectors of those. So we're just going to uncheck align clone, and there we go. Now these did get offset, so we can easily just go into the transform and push them up by 7.5, and they should be even. All right, so that's our main structure. Okay, so now let's make some windows. We're going to copy this floor extrude. Just copy that out. We'll call this window. We're going to extrude it up all the way to the very top, like that. And we can turn off the caps. Okay. So now we've got windows, and it's intersecting, and we also want to give this a little bit of thickness. So let's just put it into a cloth surface. So turn off the subdivisions, and then make the thickness, let's do -0.5. Okay. So just got a little bit of thickness on there. Now what we want to do is put the windows into a Voronoi fracture, and let's turn off the beams so we can kind of see this a little better on the floor. So we want to delete our distribution source. Looks like we're having some issues there. Let's just turn off this cloth surface. Let's put the windows into the Voronoi fracture, and then put that into the cloth surface. We can turn that off for now. So we want to delete our main distribution source, this, and we'll just create a matrix object. And let's put that in the distribution source so we can kind of see what it's doing. So we've got just big, tall windows. So right now we want to maybe, we can change this to from per step to endpoint so that it sort of spreads those out a bit. So something like that, and then decrease it on this side, get bigger windows. And then let's move it up and let's create, let's say, a few copies in the y-axis as well. So you can kind of position this matrix until you get something kind of like that. So we've got our windows. Cool. We can hide the matrix. Yeah, this is what it looks like. It's just kind of casting points onto those objects, and we could get rid of a couple of these. It looks like if we just turn down that source, we can also, just so that it has to calculate less, just make it encapsulate the object there. Cool. Turn that off. Now we've got our windows. Great. Okay. Now we're just going to create a border for the top roof. So for that, we're just going to create a sweep object. We'll take the instance of the text, copy it, paste it, put it into the sweep. We'll add a rectangle holding shift. It's way too big, so let's do 5, 5. Now we've got our sweep. And then to get rid of this rotation here, we just got to go to the sweep and turn off the banking. Okay, and we want to move this up to the top. Suppose you could have another copy at the bottom if you wanted. So something like that. And now we've got our nice building structure. For now, I'm just going to keep the one at the top, so get rid of that one. So we can copy or select all of these and group them and call this building main. And now next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to select a couple things. The Voronoi fracture, our beams, not beams main, but beams, which is the single linear cloner. And then we're going to copy our floors. And with all those selected, we're going to create a plane effector. And it's pushing them all out into weird directions. So just turn off the position. And we're going to turn on visibility. So this is going to turn on and off the layers as we move up. So to do that, we're going to use a linear field. And we want this to be in negative y. And we can make this maybe 50 centimeters tall. So now you see it's sort of building up as we go. Cool. And then this is just a little too linear, so we're going to add a random field. Just set this to overlay. We can turn on the view preview so we can see the size, maybe increase the size a bit. You know, something like that until it gets a nice random, yeah, decrease the size would be better. So something like that. Maybe just turn down that opacity just a little bit so that we can have a little less randomness. Okay, I like to hide that. And then let's move this off to the side just so we can see. So we've got a nice linear field just controlling the movement of all those layers. Cool. And looks like there's some intersection happening there, so I'm just going to adjust this sweep to be a little rounding. Yeah, something like that. Cool. So let's just keyframe this linear field. So we're going to move it all the way down, and we're going to set a keyframe. Go forward to like 60 and move it up until that last little bit is done. All right, and let's set this to linear keyframes. So now this is what we've got. Perfect. Maybe slow it down just a bit. All right, great. And then obviously this is not affected, the sweep is not affected by the MoGraph effector, so I'm just gonna manually keyframe this real quick. So as soon as this top layer of beams starts to get popped up, I'm going to set the grow to 0, and then at 70, I'll set it to 100. And I'll grab both of those keyframes and set them to linear. Cool. All right, now next we're going to texture this in Octane, and we will finish it out. Okay, so here we are in my Octane setup. I'm gonna first create a camera, go into the camera, zoom out so it looks like a, you know, like nice isometric, really like that Silicon Valley intro kind of style. I'm going to turn off this linear field so we have a nice clean view. Let's change the aspect ratio to a square so we can get a nice good view of that. And let's turn on the live viewer. Okay. I'm going to change the mode to path tracing here, and then I'll create a floor. Just scale that up. And for this, I'm just going to do a sunlight because that does a nice job of just giving that nice exterior lighting. I may create, or I may turn down the power just a little bit, and if we do the sun size, it'll kind of give it a little bit of softness on that shadow there. All right, so next I'm going to create a specular material for the glass, so we can see that right off the bat. Let's throw that onto the windows. Okay, and I'm going to turn on the fake shadows so that it's not having to calculate all those caustics. And I mean, already you can kind of see how that's looking. It's pretty cool. I think our thickness may need to be, nope, that's good. All right. Okay. Now, next, let's create a stylized sort of colorful concrete texture that we'll use for the top and the floors. And let's move maybe to like halfway through the construction so you can see that. So for this, let's do like a in the color, let's maybe do like a nice yellow or something like that. That works. And let's apply this to our floors. Cool. Gonna do a noise, Octane noise into the bump. And I'll decrease the size a bunch just so we get like this nice little concrete kind of texture. Super stylized. And just, you know, decrease the amount there. Okay. All right. Next, let's create another glossy material, and we'll do like a gold kind of material for the beams. So I'll just make it brown, turn the specular color to like a yellowish, and then bring up the index so it's nice and metallic. Maybe go a little more yellow there, and then we can add some roughness. This is far away from the camera, so it sort of doesn't need a ton of detail for this. Okay. And then maybe we copy this material, place it onto that top beam or border, and then maybe let's make it like a darker kind of orange so that it's set apart from the background there. Okay. All right, and then maybe we'll create another copy, put it onto the floor. For this one, we'll want to bring the size way down. Just give it a nice textured look there. Maybe increase the contrast a bunch. Something like that looks good. And let's maybe bring this to a light yellow like that. A little more there. All right. Cool. And yeah, so that's basically it. Obviously, I'll maybe go in here and add a little LUT or something. maybe make it a little more warm with the white balance. You could add some glow, some bloom, and actually I think I want this to be a bit more orangey. Yeah, something like that. Okay, cool. And we could add some contrast. And so the coolest part about this is we've just created this building. Obviously you can add as many details as you want. I added a lot of rooftop elements that you can just keyframe the visibility as the roof comes into play. So you could add like little fans and vents and things like that. And now if we wanted to, we could create a copy of this, just Control C, Control V, drag it over, and then you could change the text here, and then everything will update. So, if you wanted this one maybe to be taller, you could just add more floors, and we will have to adjust our linear field, increase the final height. So there we go. And then, go into the beams and increase those as well. And in the glass, you can just drag this up until it gets to the top. Okay, and then you could drag this sweep up. And so now you've got that building kind of coming up and the bee coming behind it. Super cool. Another thing you can do, let's get rid of that one, is just change the text. So you could change this base text to say whatever you want. So Maxon, and give it a second. Everything should update. And you can play around with this, add variation, add things onto the rooftops, change the heights of all of these different letters. If you used instead of a linear field, you'd used a box field or something like that, you could kind of individually grow the letters at different levels. But I mean, as far as this technique goes, this is super sort of simple and flexible, and you can change this to say whatever you want, and all of the effects, all the pieces and all that will auto update. So, all right, well, that's it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation. I hope you got something good out of it. It was really fun. Big thanks to Maxon for having me out. I really enjoyed this. If you want to find me online, my name is Travis Ragsdale. All my links should be below, and I'll see you next time.